Hello and welcome to Yogavataranam, Chapter 2. In this video, video 2.5, we'll be looking at Sandhi, meaning conjunction, that's conjunction of vowels and consonants on page 32, and the short translation exercise, that's exercise D on page 33. So I will read this passage on Sandhi beginning at page 32, and I'll also make a few observations of my own. So, just as in English, our pronunciation of the last letters of a word may change depending on the word that follows, so too in Sanskrit does the pronunciation of a word change depending on the following word. However, in Sanskrit, not only does the pronunciation change, but the spelling itself is actually altered to allow for smoother pronunciation. An elaborate set of rules of conjunction, or sandhi, exists in Sanskrit with the intention of making reading and pronunciation easier and creating euphony, a pleasing effect to the ear. So, two things there. First of all, the meaning of the word sandhi. Sandhi means putting together. It's actually from the root dha, meaning to put. Cognate with the Greek root the, meaning to put, and from which we have thesis, in Greek thesis, thesis we say in English, and with the prefix some, write it with some subdotted m there, so sandha, to put together, it makes the verbal noun sandhi. You can write it either way, both correct. Means putting together. So sandhi, in fact, sandhi is exactly cognate with the Greek synthesis, which means putting together. Sandhi, synthesis, ultimately the same word. Now, the other comment that these rules are designed to have the intention of making reading and pronunciation easier and creating euphony. Well, I don't think I can completely go along with that. Bear in mind that these rules arose from the ancient Vedic, Vedic was the language used in the Vedas, the sacred hymns, which were recited and handed down by oral tradition for a very, very long time before they ever got written down. And when these hymns were being recited by the Brahmins, I doubt whether they ever thought of, let's make some rules to make it more euphonic. Well, no, this language evolved, a specialized language evolved for no doubt a more purified form of the language, evolved for hymns, and these sandhi rules were just part of how the language was. And a lot later, it came to be written down. Now, the contrary, for example, to the position in China, the great cultural and religious importance attached to the spoken word, to the recitation, rather than to the writing. In China, far greater cultural importance attaches to the writing. In India, it's the other way around. So how something was written didn't particularly matter. Sanskrit and Vedic, when they came to be written down, they could be written in a local script. It was culturally unimportant what script it was written in. The only serious criterion for a script to be acceptable to the purists was that it accurately portrayed the sounds. So when the script came to be devised to represent the sounds of Vedic, the criterion was not spelling, the criterion was accurate representation of the sounds. Now, since these sound mutations, both consonant mutations and vowel mutations, when one word joined another, since they were now already well entrenched in tradition and the tradition of the recitation of the Vedas, the job of the script was not to devise a way of making it euphonic. The job of the script was to portray accurately how it was pronounced. And that is why we get these so-called rules of Sandhi. This is just portrays, portrays what actually happened when these words were being recited. Eventually rules were formulated, but just remember, it started off from the portrayal of the language as the sound of the language as having central cultural importance, and the job of the script being to represent and preserve the way that it was pronounced. So the text goes on, try to learn each rule as you come across it. Well, yeah, I'd certainly agree with that. Please don't attempt to learn them all in one go. It would be a bit pointless. And besides, 90% of the Sandhi rule, 90% of what the Sandhi will see is embodied in just numerically about 10% of the rules. So you learn the most common ones as you go along. A lot's made of it. It's quite simple if you just look underneath to see that this is a portrayal of how the language is naturally spoken. Then everything falls into place much more easily. So learn each rule as you come across it, yes, and be able to recognize the Sandhi changes it produces. Yeah, I go along with that. And there's a review at the end of this chapter. This is chapter 1, and at the end of chapter 4. And then it refers you to pages 139 to 144 for charts and explanations of all other Sandhi rules. We now come to the translation exercise. So I'm having a bit of trouble getting my iPad to behave itself. So, exercise D. That's on page 33. And to follow this in the Devanagari as I read it, number 1, Te Nrityata. Te Nrityata. And I will write it now in Roman script. Te Nrityata. That means that they are dancing, but in the dual, so the two of them are dancing. But remember, from page 29 we learnt for the third person pronoun, he, she, it, they, that tau, the masculine, for the dual, two of them, the masculine is tau, and the feminine and the neuter are te. So te nrityata, it's two of them, but it has to be either a feminine, two women dancing, or things, two things dancing. Now, number 2. Sadivyaticha, kshipaticha. Sadivyaticha, kshipaticha. Sa, he, divyaticha. Kshipaticha. That means he plays and throws. Remember this root div. Div is a fourth class verb, and so it adds this ya to the root. Divyaticha, kshipaticha. And remember also that in English, he plays and throws, you can put the cha, either one cha at the end, or you can repeat it. So sadivyati kshipati cha would be correct. Sadivyati cha kshipati cha, equally correct. Both are allowed. Number 3, tani nashyanti. Tani nashyanti. Tani nashyanti. And that means they do not perish. Tani, as we've seen from page 29, that is the neuter plural of the third person pronoun. Remember, masculine plural te, feminine plural ta, and the neuter plural tani. So tani nanashyanti. Number 4, yuyam chintyata katayatacha. Yuyam chintayata katayatacha. Right, yuyam chintayata katayatacha. Now in this sentence you see only one cha is used. It would have been equally correct to have said yuyam chintayatacha katayatacha. So here we see the characteristic ending of the u, that's the plural u, not the dual, the characteristic ending with the in ta. That's the same ending, incidentally, as is used in the imperative, the second person plural imperative. So yuyam chintayatacha katayatacha. So you think, it also means to worry, actually, think. You are thinking and speaking. Number 5, tau nasprishata. Tau nasprishata. That is, they, dual, do not touch. So tau, remember that is the third person pronoun, he, she, it, they, and this is the masculine dual, tau. Na sprishata. And that ta is the characteristic third person dual ending. It's distinguished from the second person dual, which is an aspirated, same, apart from the fact there's an aspirated ta. So third person unaspirated ta, second person you, two of you, aspirated ta. So tau nasprishata. They, the two of them, do not touch. And number 6, avan tushyavaha. Avam tushyavaha. We, but the two of us, not 3 of us. Avam tushyavaha. Again, this tush, it's a 4th class verb, so it adds this ya after the root. So it's tush plus ya for the fourth class. So avam, long a. So avam tushyaba means we too are content, we too are satisfied. And it mentions the Sandhi rule, which you see in number 2. Standing on its own, up here, sa, Devanagari, sa. But when it is followed by a consonant, that visarga is dropped. When, for example, it's followed by a short a, the visarga remains but then becomes o by sandhi. So sa, aham means I am he, becomes by sandhi soham. So the ah becomes an ah followed by a short ah, merges into o. That is very, very common. That's one of the rules that you really must fix firmly in your minds at an early stage. Right, that's it for this clip, and the next one will be on page 33, how to approach a verse.